Have you ever walked out of a meeting only to think of the perfect answer an hour later? Or watched someone speak with complete confidence, even though you knew they were wrong? Here's the strange part. The loudest person in the room is often seen as the smartest. But psychology tells a very different story. Researchers studying group dynamics have found something that should genuinely make us rethink how we judge intelligence. In meetings, classrooms, and decision-making groups of all kinds, the person who speaks first and with the most confidence is often rated as the most competent and influential, even when they aren't the most knowledgeable. In fact, studies on group problem solving have shown that the most informed person in the room frequently stays silent or is overruled, simply because someone else speaks with greater confidence and certainty. Think about that for a moment. The smartest person in the room is often not the one everyone is listening to. So why does this happen? Why do so many intelligent people hesitate to speak, while others with far less knowledge dominate every conversation? And more importantly, is staying quiet actually a sign of intelligence, or is it something else entirely? By the end of this video, you'll understand the psychology behind why intelligence and quietness so often go together, the hidden mental processes that keep capable people silent, and several research-backed strategies that can help you speak with confidence without changing who you are. Welcome back to the channel, or if this is your first time here, hello. I'm glad you found this video. I'm a psychologist, and today we're going deep into something I see constantly in my practice. Capable, thoughtful, often genuinely brilliant people who consistently hold back in meetings, in relationships, and in their own lives, while people with far less to offer dominate the room. We're going to explore the psychology behind why intelligence and quietness so often travel together, a real story from my practice that illustrates it clearly, and several practical strategies you can start using today. If understanding the hidden mechanics of human behavior is something you care about, make sure you're subscribed, because every week we explore the psychology behind the mind, behavior, and the invisible patterns shaping our lives. Now, let's begin with one of the most misunderstood aspects of intelligence. Let's start with one of the most consistent findings in this area, something researchers call the curse of knowledge. The more deeply and thoroughly someone understands a topic, the more aware they become of its complexity, its exceptions, its unresolved questions, the grey areas that don't fit neatly into a confident soundbite. This creates a strange and unfair disadvantage, because while the genuinely knowledgeable person is mentally weighing nuance and caveats, someone with a shallower understanding feels no such hesitation. They see the topic simply, so they speak about it simply and confidently. And confidence, as we've talked about before in other videos, is consistently mistaken for competence by the people listening. The very depth of understanding that makes someone genuinely smart can be the exact thing that makes them sound, in the moment, less certain than someone who actually understands far less. There's a second mechanism at work here too, and it has to do with how many intelligent, introspective people process information internally before speaking. Many highly capable people, particularly those who lean toward introversion, do a significant amount of their thinking internally before they ever open their mouth, weighing the idea against counter-arguments, considering how it will land, refining the phrasing in their head. This is not a deficiency, it's actually associated with more careful, integrated thinking, but it comes with a serious timing cost in fast-moving conversations, because by the time that internal processing is complete and the person feels ready to speak, the conversation has often already moved on. Someone louder and faster has filled the space, and the moment to contribute has quietly closed. Then there's something more painful underneath much of this, which is early conditioning. A substantial number of quiet, intelligent people I've worked with over the years describe a strikingly similar history, being told as children that they were too much, too sensitive, too argumentative, or being punished, subtly or overtly, for correcting an adult, for disagreeing with a teacher, for being right in a way that embarrassed someone with more authority in the room. Over time, this teaches a powerful and largely unconscious lesson that being visibly right carries social risk, that it can provoke resentment, punishment, or rejection. While staying quiet, agreeable and unremarkable feels safer, even when it means your genuine insight goes unheard. This isn't a flaw in intelligence, it's a learned safety behaviour. The nervous system protecting itself based on what it learned worked before, even when the current environment no longer requires that same protection. There's also a particularly interesting psychological phenomenon called social risk aversion that compounds all of this. Speaking up and being wrong in front of a group feels, to many people's nervous systems, disproportionately costly compared to the actual real-world consequences involved, while staying silent feels falsely safe, even though silence has its own very real costs, missed opportunities, ideas that never get implemented, contributions that never get credited. Researchers studying decision-making under social pressure have found that this asymmetry, where the pain of potential public embarrassment looms much larger than the upside of being right, is strong enough to silence genuinely correct input in group settings again and again across business meetings, academic settings, and even high-stakes professional environments like medical teams and flight crews. Where staying quiet has occasionally had serious documented consequences. If any of this is landing for you, go ahead and drop a comment telling me whether you recognize yourself more as the quiet, careful thinker or the person who speaks first. I read through these regularly, and if this video is reframing something for you already, take a second to hit that like button. It genuinely helps this reach more people who need to hear it. I want to tell you about a patient I worked with. I'll call him Aaron. He was 39 years old, a senior data analyst at a mid-sized company, who came to me because he was, in his words, tired of watching his ideas get implemented 2 years late, after someone else had said the exact same thing more confidently and gotten the credit for it. Aaron was, by every measure available, one of the most capable people on his team. But in meetings, he would identify a flaw or a better approach internally, start mentally rehearsing how to phrase it carefully, and by the time he felt ready, the conversation had moved on to something else entirely. As we worked together, it became clear that Aaron had grown up the younger sibling of a highly volatile older brother, and that any time Aaron had corrected his brother or pointed out he was wrong, even gently, even accurately, it had triggered an outsized, sometimes frightening reaction. Aaron's nervous system had learned, decades before he ever sat in a corporate meeting, that being visibly right around someone louder than him was dangerous, and that lesson had simply followed him into adulthood, attaching itself to every room he walked into that had a confident voice in it. The turning point for Aaron wasn't learning to talk more, and it wasn't forcing himself to become someone naturally extroverted. That would have been both unrealistic and unnecessary. The turning point was learning to work with his actual cognitive style, rather than trying to override it entirely, and that's exactly what I want to walk you through now. The first tool is something I call front-loading the contribution. Instead of trying to win a fast-moving verbal exchange in real time, which plays to the strengths of quick, confident speakers, rather than careful, thorough thinkers, you prepare your key point in advance whenever possible, and you say it early in the conversation, even briefly, even imperfectly, before the discussion has fully accelerated past the point where new ideas land well. A short, clear sentence said early carries far more weight than a brilliant, fully formed insight offered after everyone has already moved on and mentally closed the topic. The second tool addresses the timing mismatch directly, and it's called the bridge phrase. Rather than waiting for a perfect, fully resolved thought before speaking, which often means missing the window entirely, you can use a simple bridge phrase to claim space in the conversation while you finish thinking out loud, something as straightforward as, "I want to add something, give me a second," or, building on that, "I think there's a piece we're missing." This holds your spot in the conversation and signals that something worth waiting for is coming, without requiring you to have the entire thought polished before you start. The third tool is recalibrating what speaking up actually costs versus what staying silent actually costs, deliberately and explicitly, ideally in writing. Most people who hold back have a vivid, detailed mental picture of the embarrassment of speaking up and being wrong, but a very vague, underweighted sense of the real cost of staying silent, the project that goes the wrong direction, the error that isn't caught, the credit that goes to someone else. Making that second cost equally concrete and specific tends to meaningfully shift the calculation your nervous system is running underneath your conscious awareness. A fourth and more long-term tool involves directly addressing the underlying belief from childhood where one exists. If part of you still operates from a learned rule that being visibly right is dangerous, that rule deserves to be examined explicitly, named out loud, ideally with the support of a therapist, and tested against your current reality rather than the reality you grew up in. Most adult environments, unlike a volatile childhood household, do not actually punish accurate, well-intentioned contributions the way that old wiring insists they will. Now, an important caution here. This pattern of habitual quietness is genuinely something most thoughtful, capable people can work through with practice and self-awareness, and for many people, simply understanding the mechanism described here already starts to shift things. But if your reluctance to speak comes from a more pervasive social anxiety, a fear of judgment so intense it significantly limits your work, relationships, or daily functioning, or if it's tied to a history of genuinely harmful or abusive treatment for speaking up, that's worth bringing directly to a licensed mental health professional, because there may be more underlying that benefits from structured clinical support, and reaching out for that support is a sign of strength, not weakness. So let's bring this together. Smart people often stay quiet, not because they have less to say, but because of a specific, identifiable set of mechanisms, the curse of knowledge that makes nuanced understanding sound less confident than shallow certainty, an internal processing style that costs precious time in fast-moving conversations, and very often, an early learned lesson that being visibly right carries real social risk. None of this means you need to become a different person, louder, faster, less thoughtful. It means learning to front-load your contributions, use bridge phrases to claim space while you finish thinking, honestly recalibrate the true cost of silence, and where needed, directly examine the old protective rule that's been running quietly underneath your behaviour for years. If this video helped you understand your own patterns a little better, I have a follow-up video right after this one on exactly how chronic stress reshapes the brain over time, and I think you'll find it just as worth your time. So go ahead and click through to that next. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming, and if someone in your life needs to hear this today, take a moment to send it their way. If you're struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out to one. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.